This is the 8-9 Combo. I'm Brett McKay. This is Harry Jones. And this week, mate, all the eyes of the rugby world turn to Dublin.
How's it, mate? What the dingwall is going on in England? And how large a bench will be need to be brought in to Aviva to house, to support the weight of the French 7-1?
Those Recaro bucket seats have never seen so much weight as they're about to see this weekend at the Aviva. We cannot wait to get into another great rugby chat with the great Charlie Morgan, who's going to be filling in for Bernard Jackman, who's had to pull out fairly last minute. And our thoughts are with him. But we'll start, like we always do, mate, with cheers and jeers. You're off. Cheer me.
I've got a cheers. Oh, yep. I'm going to cheers the Nick Phipps School of Deductive Reasoning, in which Monsieur Nick Phipps has claimed that the top 5 teams in the Northern Hemisphere would struggle is to find that. Phipps probably meant bottom, middle of the table. So Leinster, who is Ireland, plus Achia Sneeman and Geordie Barrett, would suddenly be worse at beating Kiwi teams than the almighty Force, the almighty Waratahs, who have been killing Kiwis for a long time. Even those Reds just destroying all the Kiwi teams. Yeah, I think Phipps' extrapolation, which is part of comparing things, and imagination, I'm going to cheer you in your desire to get into that field, but you have work to do. Shut up, man.
I like that you've elected to cheer that. That's actually
sarcasm.
Yeah, look, I find all that actually really, really tedious. Those comparisons there, easy to make, impossible to prove or disprove, and it just becomes a
I can prove it.
Circle of downward.
I can prove it. Leinster is going to be better than the Force. Yeah, for sure.
Exactly. Equally true. You could take the top 5 or 6 Super Rugby teams to Europe, and they would adapt. They would be fine. What's it achieve? Nothing. Yeah. Nothing. Anyway, my double cheers for you is Major League Rugby on Australian TV. Quite by accident over the weekend, I discovered that here in Australia, we can watch Major League Rugby from the States on Stan Sport.
You can watch the Hounds, when they have someone in the sin bin, be in the dog kennel. It's good fun.
Exactly. So I did not know that. So yeah, I can watch the goddamn Houston Sabercats live.
And about 25 Aussies on the West Coast when Seattle plays San Diego. It's like you're watching Shoot Shield.
When Seattle play LA. When San Diego play LA, it will absolutely be like Randwick v East. Yeah. Anyway, 2 quick things before we get into this week's episode. Our thoughts very much with everyone in the southeast Queensland, northern New South Wales area with tropical cyclone Alfred still very much bearing down off the coast of Brisbane. We hope everyone can stay safe before and during, and that the cleanup is effective and efficient in the aftermath as well whenever you happen to listen to this. And if you are listening to the 8-9 Combo on Spotify or Apple Pods or any of the podcast platforms, just very quickly hit subscribe button, the button right there, right now. And if you're following on YouTube, just hit that red subscribe button down there in the bottom corner. Like Jeanette Villieu and Hayden Murray, and well over 500 of you have in the last week or so. Pity we could only pick out 2 of that 500.
Yeah, don't be left out. Do it, guys. Don't be afraid.
Yeah. No, don't. Exactly. You won't miss an episode, and the numbers climbing like they really have this week just keeps us having great rugby chats every week.
And food for our families.
This is also true. The 2025 Six Nations will almost certainly be decided this weekend over the course of 80 minutes and change at the Aviva Stadium in Dublin when Ireland take on France. It is comfortably the biggest game of the new year, and it will be massive. And to get into the weeds about it, we've gone to one of the best pundits that we know, genuine friend of the pod. Please welcome back at short notice with our very, very appreciation, Charlie Morgan. Hello, mate. Welcome back.
Charlie.
Thanks for having me again, lads. always a pleasure. Cannot wait.
No, we do.
A dress for you, Charlie. This is a momentous
Look at
occasion.
this. I mentioned there's the triple cheers. Harry Jones in a suit and tie for the podcast.
I know that.
It is
Charlie,
gorgeous.
I understand you've been speaking to the young lads, the kids, about following their dreams to become senior rugby writers and analysts and make colorful charts about Borthwick's adventurous selections. Tell us what's the précis of your speech?
I am fresh off a chat to students, at Telegraph offices. What was my speech? Be as persistent as you can without being irritating. That's my.
That's great. It's a fine line.
My motto.
That's good.
Life as a journalist.
The Ben Earl School of Thought.
Yes,
that's really good. That's genuinely great advice.
Well, it's from looking in my WhatsApps and being embarrassed by the amount of, hey, how's it going? just firing out questions, being persistent, but while trying to be affable and
yes.
not quite being an annoyance. Although, as I said to the young guys, you're gonna stray into irritation. That's sort of what your job is.
Yeah.
Like a loose forward. You got it. If the ref's not telling you to stop doing something, you haven't really been playing.
Yeah.
You have an obligation to keep going. Yes, exactly right. No, it's good advice. It is really good advice. It is a massive, massive weekend of Six Nations, and there's the 3 games this weekend: Ireland, France, Scotland, Wales, England, Italy. We are going to get into Ireland, France to some depth. You've got Harry concerns about England to start with.
I mean, what the dingwall is going on over here with Fraser sliding in? Actually, I understand that one because Slade, to me, has been a bit underwhelming with his, you have to kick with the left foot and never getting much touch. But Daly, are we going back to the future? And you pointed out that this could be viewed in a larger sense about how Borthwick selects and what he's trying and how he's trying to find combinations in his backline.
Yeah, so full disclosure, and this is probably would have been quite a good lesson to give to the young guys again, is that I really wanted to write this before it became clear that Steve Borthwick was going to pick Elliot Daly for this week, a 32-year-old at fullback who hasn't played at fullback for England since 2020.
And I can't believe that. Has it really been 5 years since Elliot Daly played fullback?
I think so, unless I've gaffed that. But I think he played because 2019 fullback has just seemed like the key of how England's tactical identity is. So either they are set up for tense kick battles, which is why Freddie Stewart was such a godsend for them, or they want to play to width, which is how George Furbank became more prominent, or George Furbank is injured, so they want to sort of artificially make that up and make sure they get Marcus Smith on the pitch by playing him. And we'll get into it, but that worked because France were just incredibly blinkered with their kicking game and kept going long, which was just really like a remarkable miss from France. And Scotland, it took till the 78th minute, I think, for France to put a box kick up that was remotely contestable, and even then Marcus Smith had enough room to take it. Scotland did that within 15 seconds of the game in the third round. So yeah, that sort of tells you all you need to know. But to get back to Borthwick, I've always thought he's a bit bolder than people give him credit for. He started Marcus Smith at fullback in a World Cup quarterfinal, which is just remarkable. And if somebody who looked like Scotty Robertson and was nicknamed Nate Razor had done that, there would be a lot of different sort of PR around sort of how they're perceived as a selector. You know what I mean? Sort of. So
we need to change Steve's name to Slash or something.
Yeah, something like that. Slash Borthwick, making all these bold calls. But my sort of overarching point of that piece is that he is renewing the team at quite a considerable rate, and part of that is because he's had to, because of various, age profile of the squad he inherited, and the exodus to France, and three Premiership clubs going bust. But this team when he comes up against sort of teams like, so Japan at home, he played a back row of Tom Curry, Sam Underhill, and Ben Earl, and everybody's going, and the optics of picking Tom Curry were terrible because he'd been knocked out a couple of weeks before. But everybody's saying, why aren't you experimenting more? And the fact is that he's sort of been experimenting and blooding in new players in front of our very eyes. I feel like this team has got includes 7 players who made their debut under him, so in the last 2 years, and there are 5 more that are that were going nowhere under Eddie Jones. So Ben Earl, Ollie Lawrence are now key players for England. They were ostracised under Eddie Jones. So he has picked Chandler Cunningham South, Emmanuel Feo-Boso out of nowhere. Nobody had been anywhere near a senior setup, and yet they've become, because they've been fast tracked because of their athleticism, and now he is trying to get a sort of level of kind of cohesion or sort of gelling. So it sort of feels like a sort of different stage for the team, but he's doing it a different way, if that makes sense. So it's kind of
but for the injury, Emmanuel would have been in the Lions contention.
Yeah.
I also think there's several articles that I would recommend everyone to go to. The one that you have where you actually lay out in color-coded charts, which I love that, the various selection choices and what
very
they
much
mean,
in your wheelhouse,
and that there's an actual logic to it. I mean, I actually for the first time saw it, and I think it was the color-coded chart that got me.
Yeah, I know how to intrigue you, but the different and just to get sort of really sort of in the weeds a bit with England for a second, they've had a program of England A games, and I was at the England A Australia A game in November, and that's obviously been a vehicle to have touch points with these young guys who are really really promising, and a touch point to sort of broaden what they can, the fact that there aren't obvious inside centres coming through that might not even be getting that much game time with their clubs, but they can go to England A, play in a less kind of pressurised environment, but still at a good level, and have that practice of sort of, because international rugby is different with shorter preparation time. So it's actually a story about how the RFU in English rugby are doing some things pretty coherently and pretty well, which doesn't happen loads and loads. So it's kind of worth highlighting when it does.
Yeah, fair. Let's should we get into this French team? It's big, Harry. In a word, talk us through that starting list there, because there's a couple of names there that I will almost certainly bugger up, so I'm not going to embarrass myself and do that.
Well, I'm going to jump to the bench and then go, because the bench is the headline 7-1. It's a bit of a copycat of the Springbok Bob squad, except it's not, because it's a 901 kilogram bench. And the Springboks use more of a lightweight. Dion Fourie is, barely 90. Kwagga Smith is about 95. And it's about the ability to slot in various places. The French have interpreted it as just pure beef. And so Miafu, 145, Aldegheri, Bailly, Aradou, Jego, Jalonche. It's a massive bench. And it poses one wrinkle, which Charlie and I have both been on socials talking about, which is, if Moefana at 12 goes down early, where do you go?
Yes.
Who moves over? Who slots over? Who becomes 9, 10, 12? And do you actually use a Michael Hooper or Kwagga Smith approach, throw them in early and hope that you don't have to bring in Lusu till later? Or do you put him in immediately and then you have a strange playmaker matrix of 9, 10, 12, Dupont, Lusu, Intermac the whole game? But the starting team, I think, Charlie can bear me out, is it's very much what was thought of. There's, Kroll is tearing up trees at loose forward. You have Oldreet, of course, that was an injury scare, but he's back in. You have, a massive lock, you have to, and then but you have a ball playing lock at Flamand. He's actually one of those very curious and rare examples of a playmaking lock.
Yeah. I mean, good player.
And then you have Movaka, who's taken over the starting position at hooker, which, I don't know, 2 years ago you would have said it was Marchand's to have, and then Movaka was the young gun. Movaka is one of the best players in the world, and he's up against one of the best hookers in the world in what I think is one of the duels of the game.
He just suddenly exploded, didn't he? Refresh memory, he came onto the bench late? in a
He
game.
played in
like
the quarterfinal against South Africa, and because Marchand was injured,
It was a late change, though, wasn't it?
I think Marchand was coming back, and
Yeah,
they just slotted
and he wasn't
Mavaka
quite
in.
ready.
And Mavaka had he and Etzebeth, when you
Had an
actually go back
absolute
and watch
stormer.
those games, it's a hooker versus lock duel for the
Yeah.
ages because they just keep one-upping each other.
Yeah.
And Mavaka is definitely as quick as a back. In open space, he's terrifying. But he does all his core skills well as well. So it's difficult for Marchand, who's really good, to get back in. So Charlie, how do you see the French lineup here? And do you agree with me that there's one quiz, which is if the midfield goes down early?
Yeah, big time. Actually, interesting you brought up Mo Vaca there. Paul Edison, who is a guru on all rugby, but especially French rugby, he reckons that if there is that Murphy injury early on, a Jagu straight into midfield, so a bit more rangy than I would have thought. So a bit more rangy than, say, a Quagga Smith or a Michael Hooper or a Ben Earl, who are the sort of emergency 12 back row hybrids that we know of. But super athletic, obviously very comfortable in open field because he's French and he's sort of being drilled with this fluid offloading game. It's interesting that they've kept Guillard at lock when Miafu coming back from a lung infection, I think, or something pretty gnarly like that. But that as you said off air, Harry, just going size, like knowing that they're going to have so much size to squeeze the sort of back end of this game. Now, where they lost the game against England was with that bench. Arguably, England had Jamie George and Elliot Daly among the replacements for the first time, and that was you were just slapped in the face by the poise of their experience and what that did for England. And conversely, France really struggled with restarts. There was a big in. That was a big in for England. Ollie Chessum also came on for England and just solidified the line-out platform that had been really dodgy before that. So for this game coming up, it's interesting that they've sort of changed things around a bit. Malvaca is a potential 12. That was another point that Paul Edison was making. He is just a freakishly fascinating athlete. I was at Toulouse Harlequins last year, the Champions Cup semi-final, and do you know when I think I've spoken about this before, but when athletes just move differently, just move totally differently to pretty much anybody, maybe apart from Dupont was obviously playing as well, but just so much balance and explosiveness about him. He could do a job. He could do a job at 12 for sure.
He is quick early, and he's like a panther in the sense that he's a bit like James Lowe when you think he's tackled, but he's not. There's just that extra effort that you have to put him down.
Yeah, I guess one additional element of jeopardy for a unfamiliar 12 in this game is Ireland's, like the intricacy of Ireland's phase play. That's going to make you look really dumb, which makes it more of a gamble. And to me, the whole 7-1. To me, the whole 7-1. I feel like sides. I don't know whether you've kind of picked this up subsequently, but Razzie Erasmus has spoken about it a couple of times, and he's sort of gone, "Yeah, it was a bit of a risk to do that in the final, but we got away with it because the other games,
which is the sort of thing you could say after you win it, isn't it? Like
totally,
not making that admission if you lose it.
Yeah, because the other times they did it in that the prestigious Qatar Airways Cup and in the World Cup pool game was obviously felt like a bit of a shot to nothing, and this feels a little bit like a shot to nothing for France because they've already lost one because they've already lost the game to England, but also because they're the away side and it feels like they have to make a bit of a running in this game, and they have to be the ones to do something a little bit different to knock France off their stride. Sorry,
it's interesting.
Ireland off their stride.
It's interesting because when you watch Chasing the Sun too, and you see Felix Jones talking in the lead up to the final, and he says, we love how the pool game went. It was 13-8. We had significant opportunities, which we botched. We had a maul to end the game at the end that Ben O'Keefe says not available, kind of there. And so you think that did work. Don't focus on the 8, focus on the 13. It worked on the defensive side because teams have struggled to keep Ireland under 20. So perhaps they are looking at it that way here. The second thing I'm saying to myself is Galtier might be thinking of the maul drive. That in all games, and that's why you have such a giant bench, is can Ireland really stop that maul for 80 minutes if they get 20 floating meters from that with attack and advantage and maybe cards? If you can card James Ryan, if you can card, Peter O'Mahony for swimming wrong. Yeah. And I think lineouts could be an opportunity. Ireland ranks at the bottom of lineout efficiencies this year. They've had kind of a problem with the lineouts.
Yeah, for sure. And where England were really impressive against France with that was that maul defence. It was a game where you watched it back and you went, "Oh, that's why George Martin gets fast tracked when he's got one knee, because he is superb in that area." So definitely, I just love it. I love that it is a real curveball and a way just to sort of give. It's actually a point that Bernard has made previously about team selections. When you give sides something to think about and you impose or implement an idea that is going to take some sort of lateral thinking to work around, and Fabien Galtier certainly has done that. And we can focus, and they will have focused on contingencies, because things can go wrong, and 2 backline injuries is going to be total chaos. But it is also gonna help them squeeze Ireland, put Ireland in uncomfortable positions and scenarios, and that is going to be awesome to watch.
In the snack bench, the food bench that they have before the game, the French always have 2 words, which is dominate and impose. And I still think that side's built around that. No matter how flair-y they get from time to time, Intermac is a domesticated fly-off. He's not a playmaking fly-off. When you run things off 9, you essentially do make things more one-offs. You do have heavy carrier ball, and they kick long. This is a power dominate team, and I think the 7-1 is interesting because they're just saying, we're just going to stuff it down your throats at your home, right in your backyard. We're just going to come and murder you, as you would say.
Speaking of Ireland, then, we have got their team. It's not quite the slide that I wanted, but it's the one that we're going to work with. And I think we largely expected that Irish team to be named, didn't we? There's no huge surprises there. Caelan Doris is back at 8. Peter O'Mahony was named at blindside for his final test in Dublin. We expect Mac Hansen is out.
Osborne in
on the wing,
instead of Calvin Nash, so that's interesting.
Who else is there? Was one of the other forwards was out.
Ty Furlong didn't make it back.
Oh, Ty Furlong, of course, wasn't quite fit, and obviously Bundy Aki comes into 12 for Gary Ringrose. Henshaw moves out to 13, so Prendergast wins the nod at 10. So. It's a good team. And there's a bit of nostalgia about it as well. Cian Healy, Conor Murray on the bench as well, and the 2 of them with Peter O'Mahony announcing their intent to retire from international football after the Six Nations. So they've got the do it for the 3 of them narrative pre-written and ready to go, and that's the motivation for them this week, no doubt.
First thing I'm going to point to is the scrum's going to be a problem. Ty Furlong is one of those people you miss a little bit, then you miss a little bit more, and then at some point you miss him a whole lot. Beelam's been really good, but he's not a big wide base. You can split him from your hooker. Porter is known going into these games as a potential penalty magnet. There's been games where, like the early red card, Charlie Ewells, Twickenham, where the only reason why England was in the game is because Porter leaked 5 scrum penalties. Yeah, he's had some club games this year where he's done the same thing. So I think the French are licking their lips with their €2 million scrum machine, and they know exactly which forces to shear and how to split who from who. And the other question I have with this brilliant team, because Ireland is that brilliant over this course, is do they have enough stopping power? If the French plan does work, and they're much better at attacking in life than defending, if they just roll. There's just that roll, that steamroller thing.
You hit on it before, mate. Do they have enough stopping power they might be really effective at defending them all in the 35th minute and the 55th minute and even the 70th minute. Can they do it in the 83rd minute? Can they do it in the 85th minute?
We saw that against the All Blacks in the November.
Yeah.
There was a bit of a fatigue at the end. And, Healy is as old as he is. So when you bring in a guy who's that old to be key stopper of mauls, and James Ryan's going to have to get very busy in the final 20. What do you think, Charlie?
The whole build up to this Six Nations, throughout the Six Nations, I thought that Ireland being at home for this game, having dusted France in France last year, would be the key to them winning the Six Nations. And I still think so. I can't change that now. However, that is the main factor that makes me think that France will, the strength and depth of that Type 5. I think is the key to this, right? And you look at sort of 16, 17, 18 for Ireland. Tricky time for Clarkson in Wales. Tricky time for Porter in Wales. The Beelam's been interesting, and that whole, and so has Antonio, and so I'm taking the frame of reference for England. So Beelam looked like he was sort of inferior to Genge, but sort of got a couple of kind of tricksy penalties for, I think, Genge spined. And then Genge looks super strong against France. So it's going to be, the sort of whole styles make fights things. It's going to come down to sort of, a bind here, a sort of body angle here, a bind there. But for sheer blunt force trauma, France are coming on strong with that. They'll unleash that bench of 50-ish, won't they? And you're absolutely right to say that might not have an impact until the last 10. And if the last 2 World Cups have shown us anything, scrum penalties can be totally just completely influential in how these big games kind of come down to the kind of death of it. So that's the one. The strength and depth of France's Type 5 and how they have configured their 23 is, I think, the best way for them to go about winning this game, and it is the way to sort of stress Ireland's vulnerabilities for sure.
It looks to me, the way that those two teams line up, it looks to me that Ireland are going to want to play this game a whole lot quicker than France are. And the interesting thing there is that Angus Gardner is in charge. It's his 50th test. He becomes the first Australian referee to hit the milestone. Ben O'Keefe was the first New Zealander to do it back in round 1 of this tournament as well. Angus Gardner is coming from Super Rugby, which is being played quite quickly on the field. So what sort of impact could that have on the two teams on paper?
Yeah, and there's clash of styles across the park here, right? So to your point, Brett, Ireland is on top and France is on bottom, and then France is on top and Ireland is bottom on almost every facet. So playing wide, playing blindside. So Ireland just doesn't go blindside. So I think interesting this time if they did for some reason, have a Jameson Gibson Park, James Lowe play or something that came out of the blue. Getting beyond the first receiver, getting beyond the second receiver. Ireland is polar opposite of France. Kick length. But even the most fascinating thing, Charlie, is that inside the Irish setup, we have a clash of styles, and Jack Crowley throws the shortest passes of all the 10s and Sam the longest. Does a spiral bomb. Jack doesn't do that. Jack does a lot of chips, grubbers, diagonals. So I cannot wait to see when it is, if at all, that Jack comes on, and whether that is the thing that changes the style. When you have Conor Murray and Jack Crowley and, sort of an old school Irish finish.
Bringing a bit of Munster ball onto this Leinster party.
Exactly. Wait, so how do you see, which of the two teams, France or Ireland, do you see departing or deviating from what they've been doing? Or do you think both of them just lay down the framework and say, this is what I do, I'm going to focus on me?
I think they're both quite stubborn stylistically, certainly France. And I mentioned earlier the kind of kicking game at Twickenham was just mad to watch, because that was the one thing that England had set up their side to sort of counteract, and it was the one thing France did. So I can't really see them deviating from that, and maybe the kind of the forwards, the bench sort of accentuates that. I love that they've stuck with Prendergast. I think we're aligned on this, Harry. I think he just looks different. There's a different poise about him. His wrists. You mentioned that long passing game. Oh my God, that's so smooth. With how quickly he can get the ball to overs lines in the outside centre channel. He's looked really. He kicks long. He kicks long too. The 50-22 he got in Cardiff, where he can only get it if he hits it with a spiral, because he can only get that depth and that sort of velocity with it.
Yeah.
That was utterly beautiful. But do you know what's interesting? To go back to what you were saying while I was in the green room or the blue room, Nick Phipps's point about dead time and Angus Gardner refereeing. And if Angus Gardner's going to hurry it up, because it's not about, as Razzie Erasmus often tweets, actually, and Jack Ginaba's tweeted about it before, it's not about ball and play time. It's about how long those halves take, which is kind of what which is the discussion that Phipps's point came out of. And if the halves last 45 minutes, then I think Ireland come on strong in the last 10 minutes of both halves, actually, which is what England did. England sort of, if you remember, England copped an absolute battering for the first sort of 25 minutes, and it was that whole thing. England could have been 30 points down. They'd have had to kick off in between, but you know what I mean. Like there were certainly a few chances blown by France, but England did come on strong in the last 10 minutes of the first half. Before then, obviously, sort of gaining superiority in the second half. So it was the game in Dublin 2 years ago, which is where Ireland absolutely wanted to keep the ball in play as high as they could and just back themselves to. It's such a cliche too, and France have got far fitter, obviously, as a collective since maybe the darker days of sort of 15 years ago when this really was a thing. But I still think that Ireland will back themselves to sort of come on stronger in the last 10 minutes of both halves if Angus Gardner has put his foot down at scrum assemblies and things like that to make sure there's a dead time.
It will be interesting to see how he handles it. Yeah. It really will.
All the forwards that play in a 7-1 say the same thing, which is, I felt like I could empty my tank.
Yes.
So you could almost view the 7-1 as a weird counterintuitive antidote to that exact problem, which is, hey, it doesn't matter. Keep going, man.
Yeah.
Because
if you want to play quick, we're fine.
You got Miafu coming in behind you. It's okay.
It's a good point.
The second part is that in all the French papers I've been reading, they're obsessed, they're slathering, they're salivating over Sam Prendergast's defensive frailties, pointing out that he missed 15 tackles in 3 rounds. So expect some big boys. Expect Aldrit just becoming the best friend of Sam all night.
There's some French back rowers and locks just lining up to have a crack at him. I'm really conscious that you two have both got a couple of hard time frames ahead. So very, very quickly, a tip on this game.
Ireland by 1 because of something very contentious.
Thinking of the clicks already.
I had Ireland by 1 as well in my head. So how about Ireland by 2? But I would like for it not to be so contentious as to rumble on into the next week.
I think it'd be tight. I think there's maybe less than a try in it, but I think on at home probably.
Any chance, guys, that this is a dud, or is it going to be as good as we all think it's going to be?
It'll be a blockbuster. It'll be an absolute builder.
Excellent. Even if it's boring, there'll be
the
content in it.
Yeah. I'll tell you that there is one good reason why there's a chance it'll be a dud, because my alarm's got to go off at 1 in the morning. So it could be.
I saw that when he flashed up the fixtures. It had Aussie times.
Yes, it did. Yes. I get. Yeah, not too many people noticed that, but yes, that is obviously the case. That's Australian time frames there. Quick word on Scotland, Wales in at Murrayfield on Saturday, and obviously England, Italy. We've probably touched on there. I don't think Italy are going to be wanting to give England too much of a start. They've got to bounce back from that thumping against France. But Scotland-Wales is kind of semi-intriguing.
Oh, the Wales' immediate rebirth and instant renaissance makes this thing, for our Scottish friends, like, oh, thanks. Now they come back, perfect.
Yeah, now they get good just in time for us. Yeah.
There's something about the bounce that you get no matter what from new coaching, but I do think it's more than that. I think Wales is being brave. They are running interesting lines. Their 9 is coming diagonal, and there's 2 forwards behind him. I can come short, I can come inside, and that allows the 10, the 12 to play like real 10s and 12s instead of just whatever that high school level attack was before. There's just a spirit of emotion too. Your coach is actually crying in the bus with you. It's different than the old man saying, "Well, there's nothing much we can do. We're looking for 3 years." So I think all of that lines up for a fantastic clash. I do think obviously Scotland's got too much, but I'm sure the Scottish spirit, which is always pessimistic, is like, "Oh, thank you. This is great."
Yeah, great. You give Wales a chance, Charlie?
I'd like to see it. I just hope they roll on with that optimism and that clarity that Harry's talking about. What's quite funny is that Adam Jones did a media session in the week where he was sort of playing to the Scotland sort of neurosis of saying it that this is the best team they've ever had. I just Scotland just must be like, get out of our heads, like, come on.
On that, by the way, the idea of getting a scrum coach and just saying you pick your best front row, and a guy like Nicky Smith being ostracized for no apparent reason, Will Griff-John, and just what a big thing is if you can trust, and you can trust your assistant coach and say, get your best scrummaging front row on the park.
Who is our best pack?
And they monstered. It was beautiful.
It's a novel idea, isn't it? Mm-hmm. Charlie, thanks so much for joining us, mate. As we mentioned, we were all set to go deep into the weeds with Bernard Jackman until less than 24 hours ago, in fact. So we thank you for answering our calls.
Are you calling him our Marcus Smith? Is that what we're going with?
No, I'm definitely not calling him that. I'm definitely not calling him that. But we thank you, mate. Thank you for giving us some time, and can't wait for this weekend. There's a couple of ripping games coming up.
Thanks for having me.
Cheers, everyone. Read his articles, guys.
This is the 8-9 combo with Brett McKay and Harry Jones. And, mate, so good to have Charlie Morgan back filling in for Bernard. I can't wait for Ireland-France now. It's just going to be a ripping game.
Charlie is a learned man, but now I see that the whole time he's been applying this principle of persisting without being annoying. So now I'm looking at him differently. So you would be a little bit more annoying.
Makes a good point.
Yeah.
He makes a good point, doesn't he? Yeah. You'll have noticed by now that the guest program is now midweek and not the start of the week like last year. And we're kicking off the week with the weekend post-mortem, looking back at all the big games and the big results each weekend. That's going to be out Sunday, early Monday, depending on where you are in the rugby world and depending on when we record it. And this week we have the great Rian Lowe joining us. And in fact, that will be early Monday, Australia, New Zealand time. Games of the week, mate, then really, really quickly, just to go back to those Six Nations game there. All three of those have got a little bit of intrigue about them. And then the table is interesting as well because, as you've said before, there is a scenario where Ireland, France and England could all go into the last round on 15 points, which is really, really interesting, I think. So
we should all want that. If we didn't have an Irish cap on or some sentimentality, a 15-15-15 into the final round is genius.
It would be something. It would be something. Yeah, it really would. I think Ireland France is the obvious pick there, but the other two games have got a bit of intrigue about them as well. We mentioned in the weekend postmortem earlier in the week that we might look at tables a little bit more in this week's episode, and we're going to whip through them, starting with Super Rugby there. And as you can see, sort of look away from the Chiefs and Queensland there at the top of the table. They're still unbeaten. The mid-tier teams, the Highlanders down to even the Crusaders, there's only a win and a half between them. So this week's games are really interesting. And so, starting with Blues Brumbies on Friday night in Auckland, that is going to be an interesting game for numerous different reasons. the Drua Chiefs on Saturday afternoon in Lautoka. Are the Chiefs going to travel as well as they have been? That's going to be a ripping game. The Drua will be wanting to win back on home soil. Moana Hurricanes will be interesting. Waratah's Force, I think, is actually the game of the week this week. And I saw some early betting figures, and it was way blown out for the Force. Like the two teams are way closer than the bookies seem to have them at the moment. Crusaders Reds in Christchurch on Sunday could be anything as well there. And if the Reds start that game well, then they're definitely good enough to win in Christchurch because they did it last year. So we'll see about that. The ERC table is tight. We've talked about that again. There's not much between what the Bulls basically all the way down to where the Lions are. There's not too much on show there. There's actually the one game.
Yeah, the home stretch in the ERC is all the South African teams have the most home games left.
Yes.
Like the Stormers have 4 home games, and I believe the Lions have their final 4 games are at home, and they're very winnable.
Right.
They're against the bottom of the log or teams that are not going to take their best team down to South Africa. So there's a scenario here where they are all 4 South African teams in the top 8, which is interesting.
It's doable. I mean, you look there, the Sharks in 4th, all the way down to Ospreys in 11th. It's a win and a half again, so it's getting tight. The Sharks are in action this weekend. This is a remnant round 1 game. We're really going back to the future or whatever it is to get to this one. So Lions were good last week, Sharks less so. So we'll see how that plays out. The top 14 is not in action this weekend, but again, Cast there in 5th on 42 points, Poe in 10th on 38. It's getting really, really curious there.
The forever season.
Yeah, exactly. They're similarly not playing in Japan this weekend. And the interesting thing there, I think, on the Japan table is Suntory in 7th on 21 points are actually now less than a win away from the likes of Honda Heat. Black Rams Tokyo can catch them there. So we've talked about the slide of Suntory and how it intrigues me. Well, that's why it really intrigues me this weekend. So.
Check out Damien De Allende's beard. He's kicking for poles for his team, scoring tries for fun, and he's got a handsome beard now.
Yeah. Round it is. I can't remember what round of Major League Rugby we're up to, but there's a couple of interesting games this weekend. Round 4 it is. Miami Chicago is first v second in the Eastern Conference. And then Utah v the goddamn Houston Sabercats is a really interesting one.
Not allowed to say goddamn in Utah. Just pointing that out. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, that's a fair point. I think Miami Chicago will be the interesting pick there. Six Nations we're going to come back to. Six Nations. The Harry Index we're going to come back to after the Six Nations. But mate, is there anything else that we need to flip in here at this point?
In the immortal words of Paul McCartney, who sang, "With a little luck, we can help it out. We can make this whole damn thing work out. With a little love, we can lay it down. Can you feel the town exploding? We can send it rocketing skywards. Don't you feel the comet exploding? Woo, oh, woo." That is the lead up to the greatest game of the season so far.
Yeah.
France storming the barricades of Dublin. And I, for one, having made this prediction of Ireland by 1, I kind of don't even believe in it now. I'm thinking, probably should have said France by 1.
Maybe.
I don't know.
Maybe. It feels like a corn flip.
It feels like a kick.
Flip.
I'll tell you what.
Yeah.
It feels like somebody's going to have to make a kick and somebody won't.
Yeah.
And that's going to be the big thing. Yeah.
I think you're right. That then is another great episode of the 8-9 Combo Rugby Podcast behind us. Our sincere thanks to Charlie Morgan for joining us at pretty short notice. Don't forget to be sure to find and follow the 8-9 Combo across all the socials, on YouTube as well. Leave comments, ratings, reviews, share us. You know what to do. This is the 8-9 Combo, the short side set piece combination you didn't realize you needed in a rugby podcast. I'm Brett McKay. He's Harry Jones, and we'll be back in your ears with the post Six Nations weekend postmortem with Rian Lowe.
Come play with us.
Ooh, lights. Righto.